Harper's Kennel of Stella, Missouri is proud to be sponsoring this portion of broadcasting on KNEO. Owned by Judy and Danny Harper, Harper's Kennel of Stella, Missouri specializes in French Bulldogs. For more information, the phone number is 417-628-3083.
Welcome to Crosspoint. An interactive program featuring ministers and leaders of the Christian community addressing the issues that are challenging the church today. Here's your host, Mark Taylor.
There's an enduring spirit of America from our liberties, our land, and our faith that today is under attack, and it's a time to stand. And that's our subject today here on Crosspoint. I'm Mark Taylor, your host, and my guest today is Michael Finch, who spent a lifetime working, giving his time and energy to defend liberty and the American Republic. Well, Michael Finch, welcome to Crosspoint. Appreciate you taking time to talk about this book, A Time to Stand, The Dire Hour to Defend American Beauty. And I would say that word, the dire hour, is true. You've actually got a crane on the front of your book here with hooked to the Statue of Liberty, actually like lifting it up to remove it. And really, you know, people in America may think, well, that's not at all what's, you know, it hasn't been done. But I can tell you, and I'm for sure, that there's a lot of people out in America that would like to do that. And so it's not something that couldn't happen in the future if things don't start turning around in our nation. And I'm glad you put this book out to talk about standing up for this stuff. Looking at the front part of the book here, in kind of like the introduction part of it, you say American culture is rotting. It's the uglification of American culture is so persuasive that it's almost impossible to imagine that something better, more beautiful, enduring had once existed, or that we were able to climb out of a cultural morass that was finding ourselves in. And you said to fix the problem, first one must identify it. And you said the essays in this collection cover the wide range of topics. So where do we start when we start looking at something that has went wrong, is going wrong, is headed in the wrong direction? Where do we start looking, according to your book?
Well, thank you again, Mark, for having me on. I'm honored and very grateful. It's great to talk to your audience. First, like I said, we have to identify the problem. The left has been on the march. I worked for David Horowitz for over 20 years, and sadly he passed away earlier this year. But he taught us that the left started in the 60s, kind of the long march through the institutions. And their number one target, they've had a lot of success in Hollywood and the media and politics, but their really number one target was overturning the education system. Because if you're going to kind of create this utopia, this heaven on earth, and replace, kind of burn down the house of the old America, you have to reach the children. And, you know, Bill Ayers, who was a 60s terrorist, he knew David Horowitz personally. When the 60s kind of petered out, he went into, where did he go? But the University of Chicago to teach in the education department, to teach teachers on what to teach our children. And that's why 60 years later, we have this kind of Howard Zinn version of American history being taught in our schools. And our children are kind of being taught this self-loathing of American history. We're not teaching the wonders, the aspiration, the beauty, and the greatness of American history anymore. I'm over 60 years old. I went to school in the 1970s. Even then, it was already creeping in that the education system had kind of changed. This idea that America is racist, sexist, imperialistic, genocidal, that is the predominant thought in our schools, and that's what our children are learning, and that has devastating consequences. So that's identifying the problem. I mean, this is 60 years. The left is very patient, and they're very good at destroying things. They want to rewrite our history. We have to recover that. It is critical that we recover the education system and start teaching the wonders, the greatness, and the beauty of American history and American culture. It's going to be, we're pushing a boulder up a mountain. It's going to take a lot of work. Identify the problem, and then kind of, re-educate ourselves to this. Look, American history, American culture, it's a beautiful story. It's a wonderful story. And I don't want to keep rambling, but identify the problem and then start educating ourselves about the beauty of America. That's really critical.
Well, Michael, it's by no accident that our statues were torn down here a while back, especially during the time of Barack Obama as the president. Remove the Dixie flag, do anything you could to try to basically stir up people and get people. And, there is a group there, and sadly, they're having to pay them and they're coming in and trying to destroy our culture, our history of our country, instead of letting it stand beside whatever they believe, they think they know. The kind of retelling of America's birthday when it was 1776, and then they bring up 1619 and call Columbus, he was a genocide, and America was, imperialistic and racist, like you said. And the culture and the history of America, it really does matter about what we do believe about our nation, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up, Mark, about the statues, because that really is important. These revolutions, these purges, this started with the French Revolution, right? You didn't just, take one person to the guillotine and cut off their head. That leads to thousands. What happened with the purges in the Soviet Union and communist China ended in the death of hundreds of millions. That's, and I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but I'm also not saying that can happen here. It can happen anywhere. And look at the statues. I remember in 2020 during the George Floyd riots that summer, pleading with fellow conservatives because a lot of conservatives said, well, Robert E. Lee, he was the military general of the Confederacy. He was a slave owner. So I guess it's okay if we take down his statue. And the point is, the left never stops at point A, right? They want to keep going and going. And sure enough, first of all, Robert E. Lee, and we can defend Robert E. Lee or attack Robert E. Lee. He was a great American. He was a hero in the Mexican-American War. He went to West Point, served in the U.S. Army. And yes, he did defend his state of Virginia. He fought for the Confederacy. But, Mark, we need to teach those things, the good and bad of American history. Robert E. Lee is an important figure in American history, however you feel about him. And his statue, that was part of the reconciliation between the North and the South. That was important. But, of course, it didn't end with Robert E. Lee. The left wanted to take down next, it was Washington and Jefferson, our two founding fathers. Yes, they were slave owners, but they were our founding fathers. And, Mark, by the end of the summer, they wanted to take down statues of Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator. It never ends with this idea that, well, we're just going to change the history or wipe out a little bit. They want to wipe out everything. And that is really important that we preserve that history, teach that, look, America's at fault. America has had sins. We are human. We are born in sin. We make mistakes. That's part of human history. But where else in the world has there been another country, another nation, another people that have been able to kind of redress these wrongs and improve society for everyone? Slavery has existed since the beginning of time. It was in the Bible, and sadly to say, slavery still exists today in parts of Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Yet we ended slavery. Hundreds of thousands of Americans died to end slavery. It was British Christian pastors that strove through Parliament to end the slave trade. So this idea that we alone are the hold the sins of slavery is ridiculous. It turns history on its head. And we need to teach that. Again, we can teach the faults. We can teach the kind of the bad things that we've done, but we also need to teach the incredible good. I'll be really honest, the good far outweighs the bad. I think you know that, and I know that. And I think for the most part, most Americans want to know that. They understand that America, you take in all account of all the things we've done, the good far outweighs the bad. This is an extraordinary country, and we should be proud of it.
I agree completely. Now, in the book, starting at chapter 1, I've noticed you've got really short chapters in the book, and then you'd kind of divide the book up into 6 parts, and you start off with the Great Plains, the soul of our land. Tell us how you decided to divide the book up and lay it out so that people could understand it better.
Yeah, I wanted to, the short chapters that, look, I've devoted my life in kind of the nonprofit sector and worked for David Horowitz, the Freedom Center, for over 20 years and other think tanks before that. I'm not a PhD scholar who's going to write a 500-page book on kind of a certain history that, I wanted the book accessible, short chapters on a variety of topics. My goal is to, I'm a layman, right? I'm not a PhD professor. I'm a layman who has spent his entire life, for the most part, being self-taught on all these things. I didn't learn a lot of the things that I write about in schools, unfortunately. But so I wanted to have the chapters that would be readable. I wanted it accessible to people. And, I divided it up because I wanted to talk about, some of it is my experiences in driving across America and visiting America. Some of it is my reflections upon things that are happening around the world, the plight of Christians, the rise of Islam, particularly in Europe. A number then I reflect on poets and talk about peace. and then a lot of reflection on America and really the beauty and the wonder of the country. So it's divided up. The chapters, the introductions to the chapters are all written by fellows at the Freedom Center, David Horowitz Freedom Center, some of our great writers. And so I wanted it to kind of segment it into these different areas so, people can kind of bounce around. It's not a book that, reads from beginning to end. You can read one chapter, skip over to another chapter, or read different sections. I have some remembrances of great Americans in there as well, or great conservatives. So that was my goal, is to, again, for the most part, if you want to dive in on page 40, then dive in on page 40 if there's something that you see. Each chapter, each section reads kind of individually, and it flows together, and that was my goal, Mark. I hope someone's going to pick up the book, read and discover a great American artist or a great American writer, and read about the architectural history and the golden age of American culture, and start that kind of road to discovery on their own. Self-teach yourself about these wonders, because that's what I've done. I mean, each segment, you study, you learn about one thing, and that kind of leads you down this path to discover that part of American history or our culture. And it's fascinating, and I hope I can reach just a few people that will do that, and then teach your children. That we can get into that, but the education, the self-education, teaching our children is what is really, I think, the most important message in the book.
On page 26, which starts chapter 6, on the opposite page here, you say something on 27. You say the tons of trash left on our beaches here in California and Orange County, up to Lake Tahoe, defy belief. Driving down our freeways and our parks, preserved everywhere, nothing but trash. Our state has become an open pit. Then you go on to say the homeless crisis is not one of poverty and joblessness and despair. It is part of those things, but it is at the core is one of mental illness, drugs, addiction, and our local governments acting as enablers in this crisis. And then you say this question, why are they allowing this? That's a good question. It's not the other, but why are they allowing it? What do you say?
It's politics. This is not a housing crisis. I mean, California certainly has an issue with housing. It's incredibly overpriced. There is not, but it's the government that is restricted, kind of middle class. They do not want people having their own homes. They're restricting. There's restrictions on building units for the working class or the middle class. California is a bureaucratic nightmare, and there's such a shortage of housing. So yes, that is a problem. But the problem of the homeless in California is there's no enforcement of any kind of law. We allow these tent encampments everywhere. I mean, in front of businesses, on the streets, on the sidewalks, on the embankments of freeways. I mean, you have these cities of homeless, and wildfires, all these kind of things that are happening because of the homeless crisis. And it's a crisis that either they want this crisis or they're just kind of ignorant to what the causes are, because they keep talking about it's because of poverty and it's because of lack of housing. The problem is you're enabling the mentally ill, the drug addicted, the alcoholic, the alcoholism, all these problems. You're enabling and allowing them to basically have open sewers. San Francisco, to me, 20 years ago, even maybe 15 years ago, was probably the most beautiful city in the country, at least one of the most beautiful. And I wouldn't go there, I wouldn't even, they're trying to kind of salvage it. Even the left in San Francisco says, look, we need to keep our businesses open. They're trying to restore some sanity to San Francisco, but it is literally an open sewer, an open pit, high crime, and just filth. And it's like, I'm originally from Illinois. California is the most beautiful part of the country in many ways. I think one of the most beautiful and stunning places in the world. It is a stunningly beautiful landscape, and it is being destroyed by this left-wing politics, which just doesn't take any kind of account and just let people kind of live and even, the laws that says you can steal up to $1,000 without prosecution. I mean, if Gavin Newsom becomes president, and believe me, Gavin Newsom is probably a little more to the right than the legislature in in Sacramento. That's not saying a lot, but if Gavin Newsom takes California politics and if he becomes president, and that's our national policy, Mark, this country's finished. I mean, we're battling for our survival now. It's heartbreaking what's happened to California to see that kind of, it's just the destruction and the filth the crime, and it's sad. I mean, it makes one want to cry. And I wanted to point that out. It doesn't have to be this way. It's because of left-wing politics that have destroyed so many of our cities and is seeking to destroy the great state of California.
Yeah. Now, if people would want to find out more about this book, A Time to Stand, tell us how do they go about doing that?
Freedom Center's flagship website is frontpagemag.com. You can go to our bookstore and buy it there, but it's available on Amazon or Barnes & Noble's, all those websites. So Amazon's good, but frontpagemag.com, you get a little bit of a price break. Again, that's the flagship website of the Freedom Center.
All right. Well, folks, stay with us. We're going to have more right after this. This is Mark Taylor. If you miss a broadcast of Crosspoint, you can always go to our website at www.kneo.org and click on the programs page. There you can access the current Crosspoint program as well as the last 4 programs that have been aired. Never miss another Crosspoint program again. Go to www.kneo.org today. Welcome back to Crosspoint. My guest today is Michael Finch, and we're talking about A Time to Stand, a dire hour to defend American beauty. And, you know, we do have a great country, folks. I mean, you've traveled around America. Every part of America's got a different kind of beauty to it, no matter where you go. If you're out in a desert area, even, you can find beauty there. God's really gave us a great country. And like you was talking about earlier, Michael, you know, you went to school, just like most of us, you know. You spent time, went to college, went to public school and stuff. But really, they've kind of got away from teaching anything about history of our nation. I mean, I don't know what history teachers are teaching now, but a lot of it must be more the myths and stories that are fractured. They're not true. And it's just kind of causing all of these things to fall apart in our nation because our young people don't really know the history of this country. They don't know a lot about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and all that. That's not being taught in our schools, is it?
No, and look, I mean, you know, why do we care? Why is this important? You know, I make the case, and I'll make the case that, you know, the culture and our kind of common history and the common culture. I mean, look, America's never been 100% united. It never will be. I mean, that's part of the American kind of the republic, and we're a federal system with 50 states. There's always going to be kind of differences, but it was very important to the founders to have a common culture and to kind of unite us behind a common purpose in our history. And that's because we're a new nation, right? I mean, you probably don't have to go to Greece and tell them, you know, Greek culture is important. It's everywhere you look in Greece, you're looking at 2,500-year-old beautiful architecture and the Greek culture and the great philosophers. Same with Italy, right? But America's a new country, and Thomas Jefferson and the founders understood that we need a united kind of culture and a history that would bind us together. Without that, then we fracture, right? We will balkanize, and we've seen that happen to great degrees. The American education system, I mean, it's tragic. You know, they are teaching American history, but they're teaching a reverse version of it. Again, we've discussed, Mark, about it's genocidal, imperialistic. Christopher Columbus only came to the New World not to discover a way to India or whatever else he was doing. It was only to commit genocide upon the Native Americans. And, you know, we can talk about the Native Americans. It's a tragic story. That's one of those things that we need to talk about. But there's greatness in America. Where else in the world can people come from every corner of the world and become a citizen of this country? I mean, it's extraordinary. There's nothing like America in world history, human history, ever. And we shouldn't be proud of that. We shouldn't teach those things. All we teach now about the Constitution is, well, it allowed slavery. Well, that was the compromise. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had a nation. Europe would have carved us up, and the United States of America would have never existed. So that was a compromise to allow slavery in the Constitution. But even then, the founders knew that slavery was going to end. And it did end. I mean, 80 years later, it ended through a horrible civil war. But again, let's teach about the wonders. And, you know, the American founders, the most extraordinary group of thinkers, I think, in world history, what they were able to accomplish, in spite of all the problems and the left's advances and civil war and everything else, America is still this great experiment. It's a great republic. But look, I mean, the left is merciless. I mean, they're trying to attack it. They're trying to take all these kind of liberties away. And to do that, you're going to educate our children about how horrible America is. That is devastating. We have to restore our education system very difficult, but we have to start teaching about the wonders and the beauty and the greatness of America. It's so critical, or this country will lose this country.
Chapter 10 is entitled Bow to Their Desires, and you talk about what drives the left is an insatiable lust for power. You talk about they want to be like God. And then over on page 42, you say how easily we succumb, seduced and drawn into these illusions. But can it really happen here? In the sweet land of liberty, run free from centuries, drawn down from our founding, sacrifice to our free republic. How can this be? But then the serpent is strong. His seduction is of power, and not man or army can triumph against, nor can our hands alone can we prevail. It is only the power of God in this force that can be vanquished. I like what you've wrote here and stuff like that. What do you want the people to know? What can we do? What's our duty?
Our duty is we're going to have to, as Ronald Reagan said, we're going to have to fight every generation. The seduction that I talked about, this kind of urge to create this, to be gods ourselves, to create this heaven on earth, it's existed since the Garden of Eden, and it will exist to the end of time. Right? We're never going to win the war because there will always be this urge, this kind of pursuit to eliminate all the ills of society. And there is poverty, there is crime. There's hunger. There's all those things around the world, always have been and always will be. The idea that we're going to somehow create this kind of perfect utopia that will eliminate all those things, I mean, it's been tried, right? It's been tried over the last couple hundred years. And I'll say it again, hundreds of millions of people have died in pursuit of this perfect utopia. We know it doesn't work. But again, it's a very powerful powerful seduction to want to be God and to kind of create this heaven on earth. Look, as Christians, we know that the pursuit of heaven and going to heaven and having that kind of perfect utopia, that's not going to happen in this life because we're human and we're flawed. So it's very important that we fight every day. I mean, David Horowitz used to have a kind of a thing in one of his speeches, where he'd say, a conservative wakes up every day wanting to pray, take care of their families, go to work, build businesses, and take care of themselves and their family and their community. A liberal wakes up every day wanting to save the squirrels. Now, that it always got a kind of a good laugh, but what his point is conservatives don't want to be messed up in all the politics and all of this, but the left wakes up every day, and they will always wake up every day wanting to create this kind of perfect utopia. That's what we're facing, and we're going to be facing it forever. So, but we have to be vigilant to fight against that. Thank goodness we have a president, Donald Trump, who, when he says make America great, yes, he's talking about a robust economy and a strong military. We definitely need those. He's also talking about the greatness of America, the greatness of American history and our culture. He's addressed these things, and we can get into that a little bit later, but he's addressed those things. So we have someone who has the bully pulpit in Washington who understands the threat that America is under and what the left is trying to pursue. This is a battle. We need to wake up every day being vigilant, saying we need to save this republic and the greatness of America. Otherwise, we're going to lose it. And what has happened in other parts of the world can happen here. The idea that it won't happen here, I think, is naive. We have to be vigilant and be strong.
Chapter 13 is the path to saving the republic. Just say no. I like what you wrote here on the opposite page on 51. The shots being fired, the first movements in a war to save our republic from government are coming from the most unheralded of places. What is happening in Topeka, Austin, Ogden, Billings, Richmond, and many other locales is just the beginning of a movement that will sweep this nation. So tell us what you're trying to say here. Are you trying to say it's going to have to come down to the states to addressing this issue on some of these things?
I think that is, critical. I mean, it's obviously great that we have, I'm a conservative. I'm also a Republican, and I'm an America First Republican. It's great that right now we have the Senate, the House, and we have Donald Trump in the White House. Okay, well, that's a blessing. But they're not going to be able to save everything for us. This is going to have to happen at the state level, the local community, and it's important for states. Look, we were created as a federal republic. It's not a true democracy in that sense. It's a republic form of government. We have 50 sovereign states. Now, Certain rights are allocated to states. Certain rights are allocated for the federal government. The national defense and so forth. But pretty much everything else needs to be controlled by the states, especially things like education. All of that needs to be controlled, and the states need to reassert. And you've seen this with Governor Abbott and a number of governors around the country, where they're asserting their kind of state control. And this is always a contentious issue, because then you get into states' rights and the Civil War, and that's what the Confederacy did. But my point on nullification and states asserting themselves has a great history in this country. Doesn't mean the states are always right. The left is actually, Governor Newsom in California is trying to push some states' rights. He won't call it that when he says we're not going to allow ICE to go into our cities, creating this kind of sanctuary cities. That's a sense that, in a way, that is states asserting themselves, I think, in an improper way, because the federal government has control over immigration. So it goes both ways. But the states, look, we have 50 laboratories of democracy, not just one. So California may be going to hell in a handbasket, but that doesn't mean Wyoming, Texas, and Florida and Iowa are going to hell in a handbasket, right? They can be very vibrant and strong. If we lose the concept of state sovereignty, then we become a centralized state, which is what the left wants. It's what Barack Obama wanted. The fundamental transformation of America means many things. One of it is total central control and losing the idea that the states have sovereignty over themselves and their citizens. So, yeah, that is really important. We have to keep that concept of the states having kind of sovereignty and control over their citizens' lives to a great degree.
Well, you spoke of Barack Obama. It seems like a lot of stuff really got a lot of fast movement behind it once he became into office. And he did give a speech, that he wanted to radically transform the United States of America and, want to kind of wipe some of our past out and burn down some of the old and replace it with some new. And he had a plan, and this was his plan of what you're talking that we're having to fight against.
Yeah, I mean, he was a kind of a student of Saul Alinsky. He studied Saul Alinsky, kind of the rules for evolution. And this, people say, Barack Obama, he doesn't love America, right? That he hates America. Barack Obama would counter that and say, I love America. I just have a very different vision of what America is. He hates the America of the Founding Fathers and the America that has existed for 250 years. He thinks that all those things that we talked about, all the sins and faults of America, he said that he feels that is America. One of his first acts as president, Mark, he goes to Egypt and apologizes to the world about all the horrible things that America and Western civilization have done. The world owes tremendous debt to a Western civilization. That's my opinion. I think that's the opinion of many. And America, I don't think has, and I say, and I think in the first part of the book, I'm not going to apologize for anything. I don't think America needs to apologize for anything. We recognize these things, but the faults, and we make improvements, and we correct ourselves and make a better society and a better country. And we've strove and done that for 250 years. But they want to overturn it, right? And I'll say this again, the left, Barack Obama, and he didn't start it. He was kind of a student. I mean, that had been brewing for decades. But the left is very good at burning down the house. They're really good at destruction. I mean, you've got to give them, I guess, some credit for that. The problem is they can't build anything. And the result of all that destruction, again, is the loss of a country, the loss of society, and the death of millions of people. That's been the track record. To think that they can somehow do it again, that all those other were past mistakes, but they will do it right this time, is incredibly foolish and dangerous, and that's what we're dealing with. So, yeah, Barack Obama was kind of the catalyst. He pushed this in a way, I think you and I could see it. A lot of Americans, he did it in a very subtle way, a very kind of Machiavellian way. And I think Americans still don't understand. When he said radically transform the United States of America, we need to really understand exactly what that means, because the left is still pursuing that to a great degree. And you look at the Mamdani, who became mayor of New York, the Democrat Party, the left has taken over the Democrat Party. And a lot of the people that are going to be running next year for Congress are on the radical. This is the AOC kind of version of the Democrat Party. That's who they're putting forth to run for a lot of the offices around this country. So, I think it's fair to say the left is on the march, and we've got a great battle ahead of us.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So, again, somebody wanted to know more about the work you do there at the Freedom Center or this book or other books you've written, how would they go about doing that?
Well, again, frontpagemag.com. It's a daily website. We have stories up there every day, the kind of current essays and articles. It's a news website. So that's the flagship website. We produce books and pamphlets. We have events. So you can go to frontpagemag.com, kind of scroll through and read the different articles. We study the kind of unholy alliance, the merger of the radical left and radical Islam and the threat they are to our country and the world. That's really our focus is, again, to fight the left, identify the left, and attack the enemies both home and abroad. So that's what you'll find at Front Page. We have some great writers, great articles. I think it's a great resource, and I would welcome anyone to go to frontpagemag.com.
All right. And the book can, of course, be discovered, and you got it on Amazon and everywhere else, too. They can find
Amazon, and then frontpagemag.com, there's a bookstore click. You can click on that right at the top on the bookstore. My book's up there, a lot of our other books from David Horowitz, Robert Spencer, many of our great writers, pamphlets that we've written on a number of these issues. So it's a great resource, and you can order any of those books and pamphlets online.
All right. Well, folks, stay with us. We'll have more right after this.
Offering words to encourage, teaching to inspire, and truth that defines real life.
This is who we are, what we offer, and what you can expect.
91.7 The Word.
Welcome back to Crosspoint. I'm Mark Taylor, your host. My guest today is Michael Finch. We're talking about A Time to Stand, a Dire Hour to Defend American Beauty. Chapter 17 of the book here, you're talking about the culture the nation has gave the world so much of our wonder and beauty. And, you talk about what happened with Hitler and the SS and stuff there. Then you talk about Christianity. And you say there were the Bonhoeffers and 1,000 more Christian martyrs that died in the camps in the hands of the Nazis. But on the whole, the churches, the Lutheran and the Catholic alike, shared in the nation's guilt. And it tells about the churches were silent, and his head was bowed in forever shame. We're kind of having that today. We're seeing some changes in our churches, and not all of them, but there are some out there that they have decided to go the way of the world, are becoming woke and different things. And this is, it gives us another battle we have to fight on another line.
Yeah, Mark, I don't think I mentioned the term in the book, but I've mentioned it in interviews. I feel that, we can't predict when this is going to happen or if it's going to happen. I think America, it certainly is in need of another great awakening. I really feel that way. We still have very strong churches, much stronger than in Europe, for instance, where I think the churches are empty and Christianity is becoming almost non-existent, except for as kind of a historical artifact. But America still has very young and vibrant churches, and many of the churches have strayed, but we still have a great community of Christians. But I feel that needs to be kind of vibrant again and kind of reawakened in a way where, again, we've had several great awakenings in our nation's history. And I think, we're certainly due for another one. We can't predict it, and you can't push it. It has to happen kind of organically, naturally. But I feel kind of a sense that we're awaiting that. And I feel like that may happen because, again, the churches, when I say the church, I mean, Christianity in general, not just a particular church, but, the church is in crisis. And America needs the church. It needs God. It needs, the kind of the Judeo-Christian ethic. It needs Jesus, I think, now more than ever as we're going through this kind of crisis. We're going through fundamental changes, not fundamental transformation, but as we enter this kind of technological AI revolution, the world globalization, the world is changing very rapidly. And it's a time like this when we need the churches, I think, more than ever. So I think it's kind of a desperate time. I'm praying for kind of a reawakening. We need it. I think that's one of the things. America's in dire straits, and how can it's easy to despair and say, how we can ever get out of this. Well, God works in mysterious ways. We pray, and I think God can help us out of this this mire. I think we can recover the greatness of this country. But we're going to need our faith in God. That's going to be critical. Without that, it's not going to happen.
Well, chapter 19 in the book talks about Christian indifference to the Christian suffering. And you talk about Christians are being persecuted all over the world. Churches are being burned, destroyed. Girls are being raped. Ancient Christian communities reaching back 2,000 years have been obliterated. And the world seems to yawn about these things. They don't see that, there's anything big to talk about here. But this is a big deal.
Well, some of these communities you look at one of the unfortunate kind of fallouts from the invasion of Iraq is the total turmoil, the rise of ISIS. You had Christian communities in Iraq that have existed since the time of Christ. Now, they've been living under Islam, they've been dhimmis and, infidels, but they've survived, right? These Christian communities in Syria and Iraq and some of these countries had survived for 2,000 years. Many of them are gone, right? I mean, either the Christians there have been killed, tortured, or ethnically cleansed, or they're gone. I mean, right? They've just been removed. I mean, it's hard not to just kind of look at that and be indifferent. But unfortunately, it's either unknown or we look at this and say, well, that's a different sect of Christianity and it's in northern Iraq and, where's that? And, who have them? And I'll bring up President Trump again and his role. You look at what he's talked about. I don't know if we're going to send troops into Nigeria, but what he's doing is he's putting a spotlight the tremendous amount of persecution that the Christians face in Nigeria. And, Africa is one of those places where Christianity is actually thriving. It is the church is very strong in Africa, but they're under assault from Islamists, right? So there is persecution. There's the capture of girls and the rapes and the genocide being performed against Christian communities in much of Africa. At least we have a president who's at least identifying and speaking out on the problem. He's kind of raising the alarm bell. And that's important because we haven't had anyone at the national level who's been able to speak for these Christian communities. And isn't it ironic that Donald Trump, I mean, I don't know anyone would say he's this kind of shining saint of a Christian. He's had kind of a checkered life. But again, God works in mysterious ways. And I think he's using Donald Trump in a way where this kind of, faulted man, we're all at fault, right? We're all sinners, Donald Trump included, of course, but he is the one that's putting the spotlight on the persecution of Christians more so than any other president that I can remember in our time. So, look, we need to be aware of what's happening around the world. Christianity is under attack. It's under attack here, I think culturally, certainly under attack in America, and it's literally under attack in many parts of the world where we're creating martyrs, where Christians are dying at the hands of the persecution and the torture and everything else that is happening. It's just devastating, and at least let's be aware of it and stop being indifferent. We need to help our brothers and sisters in Christ. I mean, it's really critical. That's kind of a call for all Christians to identify this and care and seek out what can we do to help. So, yeah, it's heartbreaking to write about that, Mark, because of what's happened, and the average person in this country just has no idea the plight that many of these Christians are under around the world.
Yeah, as you wrap up on chapter 19, there it is, I believe, it says on page 84, for Christians, any human suffering is a cry for help, whether they be a Christian or otherwise, but it's especially crucial that we heed those who are being martyred for their belief in Christ. Differences of history, doctrine, ethnicity, and the nation must be set aside. We in the West are in the greatest position to help in whatever ways that we may be determined. But then you talk about, if we do these things and all that, who will be left to save us? So, we have got a lot of needs from a lot of people. We've got a lot of questions. This situation with allowing all these people in this country is having to be dealt with, and that's causing a lot of issues. And you're seeing people fight back at the government like you've never seen it before, just calling them names and doing everything else they can to try to block them from doing their job. This is pretty serious stuff. I mean, it would just take some certain incidents to break out somewhere to make this thing mushroom.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, all I can really say, America is truly the last best hope. America's it, right? If we lose America, there is no other. I mean, where are we going to go? Where's the world going to go? What's the example for the world? And where's going to be kind of the shores where people can go to kind of seek freedom and liberty? And yet we're fighting for our own survival. I mean, Abraham Lincoln said America will never fall from without, it'll fall from within, right? What you have the left doing I mean, kind of the Cloward-Piven plan, right? I mean, you overwhelm the system. I mean, these open borders, the seeking of open borders and allowing anyone into this country without any vetting, without following the immigration laws. I mean, we all believe in immigration. It's created this country, but, without any checks or balances, without any vetting of immigrants, who's coming into this country? We have people coming into this country that seek to overturn, transform, and destroy this country. Is that what we want? So we're allowing this to happen at the same time that we're kind of fighting for our own survival. And again, that's where you start to despair, because we have a political class that is actually actively, whether knowingly or unknowingly, I think it's knowingly, that are seeking to destroy the republic and destroy our liberty. And we won't be able to fight back if we lose our kind of liberty and the republic falls. Then we're finished, Mark. I mean, it's that. So we're fighting this on so many fronts, and you don't think countries like China and around the world are looking at this saying America's falling apart. America's kind of committing suicide with the open borders, with the immigration, and what it's doing to its culture. I mean, they must be excited over there. So they may not even have to. There may not even need to be an attack from outside. America can fall completely from within, from all these kind of internal attacks. So, we've got so many battles to fight. Again, what follows, and I'm not putting this all on Donald Trump, right? But what follows him, we can have a President Newsom or we can have a President Vance. I don't know. But we're not going to save the country in the next 2 to 3 years. It's going to take decades to save the country. So we've got such a battle, but we've got to be prepared and we need to be vigilant.
You talked to in chapter 21 about the opium revenge, and we are seeing a tremendous amount of drugs coming in the country. Like you said, I'm back in the same time you were in the 70s. Marijuana wasn't nearly as potent as it is today. We had heroin, we had those other things too that were pretty nasty. Because this has taken so many people's lives. This is something that the president apparently has taken seriously. Other people don't want to. But this is a real enemy that's destroying our society, especially our younger people.
Oh, totally. And I have an admission. I mean, 2016, 2015, before Donald Trump became president in the first term, when he started talking, I mean, I follow these things. I know you do, Mark. I mean, try to follow what's happening in the country and society. When he started talking about the fentanyl crisis and what is the devastation it's doing to America, middle America, I was kind of in shock. I knew it was there. I had no idea that the problem was this extensive. I mean, it is killing thousands of Americans every year. I mean, this is a crisis that the political class has completely ignored, or they just didn't know about it, or whatever the case is. Donald Trump is the one that at least kind of awakened me to what is happening with the fentanyl crisis and the drug crisis. And the fact, that the article points to the fact that China is allowing all this, and I don't care what trade agreement they make with Donald Trump or anyone else, they will continue to allow fentanyl into this country through the Mexican cartels, and it is destroying this country. I mean, it is awful, and they're doing it. My point was that opium was the British, traded opium into China and fought opium wars to open the border and open the trade so opium could freely flow into China. The Chinese Empire knew exactly what was happening. They just couldn't stop it. They wanted to stop the opium trade, but they couldn't. And it really helped bring down the empire and destroyed that Chinese civilization, the Chinese Empire at that time. And look, China studies their history. So the fact that they're basically allowing and profiting from the flow of fentanyl into this country, in a way, I feel that it's kind of the revenge from what the West did to them back in the 1800s, and we're allowing it. I mean, I know Donald Trump is aware of it. He's trying to fight this. I mean, look, if I'd be very active in this. If we need to put in American troops, stop the trade, if they need to go into Mexico to take on the cartels, I think we need to do whatever we can do to save our country, because China, working through these cartels, is actively trying to destroy this country. And we have got to be active and vigilant to stop that. It is such a crisis that I think more Americans certainly are aware of it now, but we don't know what to do. I think we're kind of crippled and frozen because we don't know what to do. But I think we're going to have to take some very drastic steps. Otherwise, this problem is just going to continue to become worse and worse.
You also going to say there at the end of the book that so long as we breathe, we must fight every day to defend what is ours and defend against the enemies that seek to destroy us. both externally and the enemies in our own heart. We must be vigilant. What do you want to tell people from picking up this book?
I'll quote Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who said, we need to remember that the divide between good and evil goes through every human heart, right? We're all capable of tremendous good. We're all capable of tremendous evil. That lies within all of us. So the vigilance has to come from us, and it has to, we have to work with our families. We have to remember our faith. I mean, that we cannot, America, the founders understood this. America is not going to survive without a virtuous citizenship, right? Without a virtuous population. We have to remain faithful, stay strong in our faith, and stay vigilant, because we will win. And I do believe in divine providence. I think that, we still have God's favor in spite of all the faults and all the things that we've done and kind of turned against God in so many ways. But I think we have to rely on divine providence. We have to pray. And we have to be vigilant, because these are incredibly strong forces. And it seems incredibly dire, but we have to fight every day and pray, because I think wonderful things can happen. And I remain hopeful, because, look, I believe in the faith and the common sense of the American people. We want to believe in the greatness of America. We have strong faith still in this country, and that's what will save us. And I think we will be saved. But we have to, be aware of all these things, stay vigilant, stay strong, and keep fighting for this great republic.
All right. Before you leave, again, tell people how they can find out more about A Time to Stand.
Well, frontpagemag.com. It's the flagship website of the David Horowitz Freedom Center. You can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble's online and look up Michael Finch, A Time to Stand. And I appreciate it. And again, if just a few people read the book and it leads them down a path to try to educate themselves, educate your children about just rediscover, restore the greatness and beauty of American history and culture, that'll be a huge step in saving our country. And I can't thank you enough, Mark, for having me on. And God bless you. And we will save this country.
Well, thank you again, Michael, for being with us on Crosspoint.
Thank you.
Good interview we had today, folks. Great interview. In fact, A Time to Stand should encourage you to get out there and be doing something for our nation, folks. Get involved in our schools. Get involved in your church. Get involved in your government. Do something to help this nation. And remember, all this stuff that we learn was taught to us previously by the Holy Bible. The book in my other hand. That's what we need to know. God's Word. There's power in that Word, and it will help us because it's inspired words of God's, and those words aren't outdated. The Bible contains the most important words you're ever going to read and certainly ever follow. Be sure to join us again next time as we again discuss issues that are affecting the church. Have a great week and allow God to use you for His purposes so that greater things can be done. Make your life count in God's plans for eternity. I'm Mark Taylor.
Crosspoint is a program produced in Studio 101 at KNEO Radio. Not all of the views on Crosspoint reflect those of the management or staff of KNEO. You may contact the Crosspoint program at 10827 Highway 86 East, Neosho, Missouri 64850, or by email crosspoint@kneo.org. You can hear Crosspoint 4 times a week: Saturday morning at 1, Saturday afternoon at 2, Saturday evening at 9, and Sunday evening at 7. You can also listen anytime online at kneo.org.